Hey, welcome back. I'm Jim LaPierre. This is Sober Now, and today's topic is why getting better doesn't feel better. As always, very much welcome your questions and comments. Would love to hear what's going on in your recovery today. Feel free to message me on any of the streams. And if you haven't yet been over, please drop by Sober Now's Facebook page and give it a quick like. And then you'll get notifications for future live streams and other content that we're creating. So let's jump into it. It's kind of amazing to me when we look at different forms of recovery, whether it's substance use disorder, trauma, mental illness, any of the things that people like me need to heal from. We have a tendency to gauge our progress or our success by how things feel, which is kind of extraordinary. We don't do that in most times and places. We don't judge our job performance by how happy we are or how things feel. When we make investments like getting back into shape, we know that going to the gym is going to be hard. We know it's going to hurt. We know it's going to be uncomfortable. But when it comes to things like our mental health, when it comes to things like how is our recovery program going, we judge things by how happy we are or how things feel to us. And the simple truth, of course, is that getting better and making those investments doesn't necessarily feel better in the short term. And I think for a lot of us, if it's our first time through, there's a disillusionment that occurs. We don't necessarily know what to expect, and yet we find that things are much harder than we thought they would be, which, of course, begs an interesting question. How did we come to have any expectation about what this was going to be like? I think if we had the experience of getting to know people who have long-term recovery, they seem impossibly happy to us, and we want what they have. Many years ago, I was counseling a young woman who was in early recovery and really dealing with a lot of wreckage in her life. She ran into someone in my office that she knew had long-term recovery, and she said, I want what you have. And she asked him, how long have you been sober? He said, 25 years. And she said, great, how do I get what you have? And he said, well, stick around. It happens one day at a time. So what's funny to me is it may have taken us decades to get to the point that we're willing to change and do what we needed to do, but of course we'd like to be all better by Tuesday. The simple reality is that getting sober or making those initial investments doesn't necessarily make everything better. It improves our health and it creates a million possibilities, but it doesn't make everything all better overnight. It doesn't change other people. It won't transform your partner into the person that you most want to be with. It won't take away damage that we've done, especially to our loved ones, our careers, our friendships. It's darkly amusing to me when people say, well, this is much harder than I thought it would be. And I'm not one to pull punches. I will say to folks, you're absolutely right. Early recovery sucks. It's hard, it hurts, and it's scary. But it's also worth it in spades. Recovery, for most of us, ebbs and flows. Sometimes it feels like positive things and change, and all of it is happening way too fast. Other times it feels like an impossibly slow process and one that requires constant investment. The rewards of recovery often mean realizing that we have other conditions that we have to recover from, and trauma is the most common of those. Dealing with mental health conditions or eating disorders or self-harm or any of the things that people like me tend to do to ourselves, all of these are very common. So is what counselors often refer to as unresolved grief and loss. And this is one of the hardest and most common things that we encounter in the course of recovery. The simple truth is nobody wants to grieve. It hurts, it's hard, it's messy. But it's also one of the most important investments we can make, and it's one of the most important aspects about how we come to have a life that has a greater freedom, has more joy, and has more fulfillment. Grieving also means that we get to have less and less baggage going forward. It means learning how to cope with what feels like an overwhelming amount of emotion. And what it requires most is a willingness to be vulnerable and truly learn to lean on others. Too often we see ourselves as unworthy or undeserving of support. Shame just debilitates us. And so we see the possibility that we would burden or impose on others, and so we don't ask. Losing sight, of course, of the fact that it helps them to help us. I always ask folks, do you know how good it feels to help somebody who really deserves it? And when they say yes, I say, great. Why would you deny other people, especially people who care about you, the opportunity to feel good by helping you? Grieving is different than what we're accustomed to. What we're accustomed to is avoiding ourselves, neglecting ourselves, stuffing what we see as negative emotions. And all of this, of course, results in suffering. But when we suffer alone. Grieving is about learning how to share pain with others because it creates the opportunity for release. It creates the opportunity to let go. It's never a one-time event. Sometimes it's dozens or hundreds or even a lifetime of letting go a little bit at a time. And the key, of course, is to recognize that every time you let go of something, you have less to carry. Letting go is never a one-time event. And this is the kind of thing that we come to these realizations, these epiphanies through the course of recovery. We have a deeper understanding, we have far greater awareness. And what we become aware of is that we're carrying a lot of past pain, a lot of past anger. And there's this part of us, of course, that just wants to forget. We tell ourselves to move on. We tell ourselves that it's in the past, and so that there's no point in exploring it today. And what I say to folks is, if it's affecting your life today, if it's limiting your life today, then it's not over. It's continuing to have this negative impact. It doesn't mean that we necessarily have to relive the past or analyze anything. I think one of the most abstract concept, it's something that we talk about all the time, but if you ask somebody, how do I actually do that? I bet you they can't tell you. So letting go, I always welcome the challenge of how do we take an abstract idea and put it into practice. So what I usually say to folks I serve is that in order to let go, you have to have mindfulness. You have to have an awareness of self. And if you have that, then you're going to start to notice different emotions, different memories that are surfacing, different thoughts that are intruding. And you can identify those. But when you identify them, the easiest thing to do is to tell yourself that you shouldn't be feeling that way, or that you should be over this, or that somehow judging where you're at or what those emotions are. And that all by itself will derail the whole process. So we have to be mindful, we have to identify what we feel, we have to withhold judgment of it. And if we do that, then we become free to experience what it is we feel internally and then express it externally. Ideally, we involve other people in this process. Ideally, we learn that as much as it hurts to grieve, that each time we do so, that there's a little less pain that we carry around. And this, again, is one more reason why we can't judge our progress by our emotional state. If something is debilitating and horrible, and we get to a point where it's bad, that's actually better, right? That's progress. It doesn't necessarily feel good, but it's healthier and it's more manageable and it's more sustainable. Grieving is completely congruent with step work. If you happen to be in a 12-step fellowship, past pain and especially loss, of course, is something that we're powerless over. Ideally, it's something that we incorporate a spiritual approach to. It's grieving is congruent with steps 4 and 5, where we're identifying past pain, past anger, and resentment, and releasing that. It relates very well to step 6 and 7, where we're identifying character defects, which I see as the ways in which we most commonly get in our own way, and the ways in which we most commonly fail ourselves and fall short of the person that we most want to be. And there's some very subtle aspects of those character defects when it comes to grief. Stoicism is something that we tend to value in our culture, but I see it more as fear and false pride. I see it as conditioning. Uh, People like me learn from a very young age how to maintain composure, how to not let it show how we feel. And we have this exaggerated sense of what independence is, and we are very reluctant, very resistant to involving others in that process. We tend to define this in a very unhealthy way. We define it as strength, that our ability to endure pain and to not let it show and to be there for others is somehow the best that we could possibly do, and it isn't. Being able to share pain with each other creates opportunities for all of us. we we too often hide behind ideas about independence or ideas about how important it is to be able to just rely on yourself, and all of that is so ridiculously overstated. The truth is, we're afraid to make new connections. We're afraid to be vulnerable. We're afraid to open up, and it's amazing to me because we so desperately want to be understood, but at the same time, we're so afraid to open up and show this is who I really am. So, countless times over my career, I've had people that I serve express this bewilderment that going through these processes, receiving coaching or therapy is making them feel worse and not better. And they think, well, maybe I should just stop this process. It doesn't seem to be helping me. um, it's the It has everything to do with why I hate self-help books. Self-help books will talk to you about positivity and how you have to manifest positivity. And the simple truth is, when you're carrying pain, overcompensating with the idea that you just have to be positive and be happy and everything's going to work out great. Um, we've convinced ourselves of such things, but they're never true. What really is happening as we notice that we're feeling worse is that we're attaining clarity. And I wish that clarity always felt good, but too often what we're really seeing is the wreckage of our lives. What we're really seeing is just how much we've alienated ourselves or isolated ourselves. We're coming to a deeper understanding of why we are the way we are and the painful and abusive and traumatic experiences that created the struggles that we have today. So clarity comes from mindfulness. Again, that's the opposite of what we're used to. What we're used to is avoiding ourselves, ignoring ourselves. And the way that I challenge folks on that is to say, you can't control what you ignore. We fight these losing battles for self-control because, first of all, we fight them alone. And secondly, we tend to relate to ourselves in ways that we would never treat another person. You wouldn't say to somebody else, well, this shouldn't bother you. You should be over this. This isn't important. Those types of statements are invalidating. But it's one of the most important things we can do in early recovery of any type is to notice our self-talk and notice that we speak to ourselves in ways in which we'd never talk to another human being because we'd consider it mean or abusive. And we justify it by saying, I'm just hard on myself or I just have high standards. But if you wouldn't say it to another person, then my suggestion is don't say it to you. Sometimes clarity means seeing exactly how fucked your life is. Sometimes it's the totality of seeing everything that needs to change or everything that we've lost. And it's so completely overwhelming that we just shut down. We distract ourselves. We despair that we'll never get there. And what I've learned is that if you break those down into small steps, you can get there. But there's always going to be another there to get to. I hear from folks all the time that they'll feel better when they get there. But there is a moving target. There's always going to be another one to get to. And my best suggestion is to treat all of these things as a work in progress. Some of these are lifelong, some of these will just carry a residual. And it's not like I'm ever going to be 100% free of past pain. I can be 90, 95 maybe, but there's always going to be more for me to let go of. I need to be able to notice when I'm triggered, when I'm relating and identifying what is it that I'm getting in touch with, and what is my responsibility as far as what I'll do with this. Recovery ultimately is a process of transformation and change. We're people who fear change. We resist it even when it's possible, even when it's positive. And my experience is that resistance is always fear. We have this overwhelming sense that we just don't know how to act. We don't know how we're supposed to feel, how we're supposed to be. And I remind folks all the time that what you're supposed to do is somebody else's idea, not yours. There's no way to free yourself of pain in a way that doesn't hurt, and the only way out of it is through it. As we transform our lives, clarity becomes something that we appreciate a lot more, because we start seeing opportunities, we start seeing ways in which we can continue to grow and be of service to others. It affords us clear courses of actions and an understanding of each encounter. It allows us to be more grateful. I oftentimes go back to Henry Miller. He said that the aim of life is to live, and to live means to be aware. So through the course of recovery, we become infinitely more aware. We find countless opportunities, but what we're looking for is usually the ones that feel good, the ones that seem like they'd be enjoyable. What we're not necessarily looking for is, what is the uncomfortable thing that I need to invest in? What is the painful process that I need to go through so that I can become more free? It's kind of amazing to me. One of the common denominators amongst the hundreds and hundreds of people that I've served over my career is that when we're going through something that's really hard, sooner or later everybody says to me, Jim, I just want to be happy. And I go, oh, okay, is that all? Well, what do you need to be happy? Is my question. And they usually just kind of stare at me for a minute and they realize that they don't know. It takes a lot of courage to know what you really want, because knowledge creates responsibility. If you know what it is you want, then chances are you have to go outside of your comfort zone to get it. Chances are you have to face some fear, you have to overcome some amount of adversity. Happiness is certainly not a destination, it's a choice. It's a fleeting emotion. It's an attitude. And I always encourage people, don't settle on happiness for a goal, because first of all, it's fleeting. It doesn't last. I want the stuff that sticks around. I prefer joy. I prefer fulfillment, satisfaction. The moments that I most crave are the ones where I leave a given situation or encounter and I know to the depths of myself that I just did exactly what my higher power wanted me to do. In the end, it's about relationships and experiences, and it's about connection. And so the more that I connect with good people and kindred spirits, the more that I connect to my higher power, more and more things could become possible. But they don't always, like I said, they don't always feel good. They're hard, they're demanding, and they're also worth it in spades. So I think of it as investments that I make in myself, and I think of it as investments that I make in others. And my experiences, those always pay off, and there's always unexpected benefit that I experience from that. So, thank you for writing in, Tricia. I'm glad that some of the things we covered today were helpful to you. As always, I love hearing from you. Please connect with me. Jim@sobernow.com is the easiest way to reach me. Would love to hear what's going on in your recovery and be a resource to you if I can. And of course, I love getting topic suggestions. What kind of things would you like for us to be talking about? What would be helpful to you? Would love to have you check out our YouTube channel. Sobernow.com has over 160 videos on various aspects of recovery, all completely free. And of course, I would love to have you check out our website. Sobernow.com has a subscription service for under $15 a month. You can get access to a home study program that is completely go at your own pace, completely confidential, and affords anonymity. and some tools there to bolster your recovery. A separate program for those of us like myself who identify as affected others, those of us who have loved ones in active addiction or early recovery. Coping with that stress and doing so as a family. Addiction divides us, hurts us all, not just the person who's in active use. So, that's it for today's talk. Please connect with me. Please take excellent care of yourself. And please make some of these investments. I promise you're worth it. Have a great day.